What happens when Hollywood royalty thinks they can rewrite the rules of daytime television? In just 39 seconds, one explosive comment would turn a routine celebrity interview into the most shocking meltdown in Live with Kelly and Mark history. Picture this. The cameras are rolling. The studio audience is buzzing with excitement. Kelly Ripa and Mark Consuelos are doing what they do best, bringing their trademark warmth and humor to millions of viewers across America. Today's guest was supposed to be a slam dunk, a feel-good interview about charity work and upcoming projects. Instead, what unfolded was a masterclass in how not to handle live television. The trouble started before the cameras even rolled. According to sources backstage, the guest arrived 40 minutes late, which in television time might as well be 4 hours. No apology, no explanation, just a casual stroll into the makeup chair, like the entire production team hadn't been scrambling to fill dead air. Kelly, ever the professional, greeted her guests with genuine enthusiasm. "We're so excited to have you here today," she said, flashing that million-dollar smile that has made her America's sweetheart for decades. The response? A dismissive wave and a comment about how the green room coffee wasn't up to her standards. But Kelly and Mark are pros. They've handled difficult guests before. They know how to smooth over awkward moments and keep the show moving. What they weren't prepared for was what came next. The interview began innocently enough. Mark asked about recent charitable endeavors, a softball question designed to let the guest shine. Instead of talking about helping others, the response was all about personal struggles and how hard it is to be constantly in the spotlight. Kelly, sensing the interview veering off track, tried to redirect. "That's so relatable," she said. "But tell us about the incredible work you're doing with children's literacy." It was a perfect setup, a chance to pivot to something positive and meaningful. The guest's face darkened. "You know what, Kelly? I don't think you really understand what it's like to have every single move scrutinized. You sit here in your comfortable little studio bubble, playing it safe with your scripted questions and your fake smile." The studio fell silent. Kelly's professional composure never wavered, but you could see the shock in her eyes. Mark leaned forward slightly, his protective instincts kicking in for his wife and co-host. "I'm sorry," Kelly said carefully. "I think there might be some misunderstanding here. We're genuinely interested in hearing about the positive impact you're making." That's when things went completely off the rails. "Positive impact?" the guest scoffed. "Let me tell you about positive impact. I've sacrificed everything for this industry. I've given up my privacy, my peace of mind, my relationships. And for what? So I can sit here and pretend to be grateful for your little platform?" Mark tried to step in. "We absolutely appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. This show has always been about celebrating our guests and the amazing things they're doing." The guest turned on him with venom. "Don't patronize me, Mark. You have no idea what real pressure feels like. You're just here because of who you're married to. At least be honest about that." The audience gasped. Attacking Kelly was one thing, but going after Mark's credentials and their marriage crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. These weren't just hosts anymore. They were a family being attacked on live television. Kelly's voice remained steady, but there was steel beneath the silk. "I think we need to take a step back here. This isn't the conversation any of us expected to have." "Expected?" The guest laughed bitterly. "You want to know what I expected? I expected to come on here and have an honest conversation about the reality of this business. Instead, I get the same sanitized, boring questions everyone else asks. Do you think your audience is stupid? Do you think they can't handle real talk?" The cameras kept rolling. In the control room, producers were frantically trying to decide whether to cut to commercial or let this train wreck continue. This was live television at its most raw and unpredictable. Mark's jaw tightened. "Our audience deserves respect, just like our guests do. We've built this show on mutual respect and genuine conversation." "Mutual respect?" The guest stood up from her chair, her voice rising. "Where was the mutual respect when your producers told my team that I needed to arrive early for extra preparation like I don't know how to do interviews? Where was the respect when they handed me a list of approved topics like I'm some kind of liability?" Kelly remained seated, her hands folded calmly in her lap. "Those are standard procedures for any guest appearance. It's not personal. It's just how television works." "Standard procedures for who? For celebrities who don't know their own minds? For people you think you can control?" The guest was pacing now, completely abandoning any pretense of a normal interview. "I've been doing this longer than you've been on television, Kelly. Don't talk to me about how this works." The audience was completely silent now, watching this surreal scene unfold. Some were recording on their phones, knowing they were witnessing television history in the making. Others looked uncomfortable, unsure whether they should laugh or call for security. Mark stood up slowly, his 6-foot frame casting a shadow over the interview area. His voice was calm but firm. "I think we all need to take a breath here. This isn't what anyone signed up for today." The guests whirled around to face him. "Signed up for? You mean signed up for your sanitized version of reality? Your carefully crafted image of perfect television hosts who never ask real questions or challenge anyone?" Kelly finally rose from her chair, her movements graceful despite the chaos swirling around her. "We ask real questions all the time. We've had difficult conversations on this show about serious topics, but we do it with respect for our guests and our viewers." "Respect," the guest repeated mockingly. "You keep using that word. Let me tell you what disrespect looks like. Disrespect is making someone wait in a tiny green room for an hour while you finish your little pre-show rituals. Disrespect is having your staff treat someone like they're doing them a favor by being here." The studio audience was getting restless. Some were shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Others were leaning forward, unable to look away from the spectacle. The energy in the room was electric and dangerous. Mark's protective instincts were in full gear now. "Our staff treats every guest with professionalism and courtesy. If you had concerns about your experience, that could have been addressed privately." "Privately?" The guest's voice pitched higher. "So you could sweep it under the rug and pretend everything was fine? So you could maintain your precious image as America's sweethearts?" Kelly stepped forward, her media training kicking in. "We're not trying to sweep anything under any rug. We're trying to have a conversation, but it takes two people willing to engage respectfully." There's that word again, respectfully. The guest began pacing in front of the interview chairs like a caged animal. "You know what's not respectful? Putting me on after a cooking segment about holiday cookies? Like I'm some kind of afterthought entertainment." The control room was in chaos. Producers were shouting instructions, trying to figure out how to salvage this disaster. Commercial break wasn't scheduled for another 8 minutes, but they were seriously considering pulling the plug early. Mark tried a different approach, his voice softer. "The show has a format that works for our audience. We balance different types of content throughout the hour. It's not meant as any kind of slight." "Format," the guest spat. "Everything is about your precious format. What about spontaneity? What about real human connection? What about treating your guests like actual people instead of content to fill your time slots?" Kelly's patience was wearing thin, but her voice remained steady. "We do treat our guests like people. That's why we're trying to understand where this is coming from and how we can move forward constructively." "Constructively?" The guest laughed harshly. "You want to know what would be constructive? Admitting that this whole show is a facade, admitting that you're just corporate puppets, reading from teleprompters, and pretending to care about people you've never met." The audience gasped again. Attacking the hosts personally was one thing, but questioning the authenticity of their entire careers was nuclear. Mark's jaw clenched visibly. "Kelly and I have been doing this for years because we genuinely care about connecting with people. Our audience, our guests, our crew. This isn't an act for us. Isn't it though?" The guest stopped pacing and faced them directly. "When was the last time either of you had a real conversation on this show? When did you last ask a question that actually mattered? When did you stop playing it safe and start being honest?" Kelly's voice took on an edge for the first time. "We're being honest right now. Honestly, this behavior is unprofessional and unfair to everyone involved in making this show." "Unprofessional?" The guest's eyes blazed. "You want to see unprofessional? Unprofessional is booking guests and then trying to control every word that comes out of their mouths. Unprofessional is creating an environment so sanitized that nobody can have a real moment." The studio fell into an eerie quiet. Even the crew members had stopped moving, frozen by the intensity of the confrontation. The only sounds were the hum of the cameras and the guests' heavy breathing. Mark made one last attempt at de-escalation. "Look, clearly there's been some miscommunication here. Why don't we start over? Tell us what you really want to talk about." The guest's response was swift and cutting. "What I want to talk about is how fake this entire industry has become, how shows like this pretend to be about real people and real stories, but it's all just manufactured content designed to sell products during commercial breaks." Kelly had heard enough. Her voice was steel wrapped in velvet. "Our show has been on the air for decades because we connect with real people about real things. We've celebrated countless guests, supported important causes, and brought joy to millions of viewers. That's not fake. That's not manufactured. That's genuine." "Genuine?" The guest's voice cracked with disbelief. "Nothing about this is genuine. Your smiles are fake, your interest is fake, your concern is fake. Your performer's putting on a show, nothing more. The words hung in the air like poison. The studio audience was completely silent now, sensing that something irreversible was happening. This wasn't just a difficult interview anymore. This was a complete meltdown happening in real time. Mark stepped closer to his wife, a united front against the verbal assault. We're not perfect, but we're real people doing real work. If you can't see that, then maybe this isn't the right place for this conversation. The guest's eyes narrowed dangerously. Are you threatening to cut my interview short? Are you going to silence me because I'm not playing along with your little charade? Kelly's composure finally cracked, just slightly, but enough to show the fire beneath. Nobody is silencing you. You've had plenty of time to express yourself. But respect goes both ways, and right now, you're not showing any. The guest took a step closer to the hosts, invading their personal space in a way that made everyone in the studio uncomfortable. Respect? You want to lecture me about respect? Let me tell you something about respect. Respect is not booking someone and then treating them like they should be grateful for the opportunity. Mark moved protectively between the guest and Kelly, his voice dropping to a dangerous calm. Step back. You're crossing lines that shouldn't be crossed. Lines? The guest's voice rose to near shouting. What lines? The lines you've drawn to protect your perfect little bubble? The lines that keep you from having to deal with real emotions or real conflict? The control room was in full panic mode now. Producers were frantically signaling to security, but nobody wanted to create an even bigger scene by physically removing a guest on live television. This was uncharted territory. Kelly stepped around Mark, refusing to be shielded. Her voice was ice cold. The line is basic human decency, something you seem to have forgotten today. Human decency? The guest laughed bitterly. Where was human decency when your producers made me sign a waiver saying I wouldn't discuss certain topics? Where was human decency when they told me I couldn't mention specific people or events? Mark's voice was steady but firm. Those are standard legal protections. Every guest signs them. It's not personal. Everything is personal when you're the one being controlled? The guest was gesticulating wildly now, completely unhinged. You sit there in your matching outfits with your scripted banter, pretending to be authentic, while controlling every aspect of what happens here. The audience was getting restless. Some people were starting to get up and leave, uncomfortable with the hostile energy filling the studio. Others remained glued to their seats, knowing they were witnessing something unprecedented. Kelly's media training was warring with her natural instincts. We're not controlling anything right now. You're free to say whatever you want, and you're proving that pretty clearly. Am I though? The guest's eyes were wild now, because I bet if I really said what I think about this industry, about the people who run it, about the way they treat people like me, you'd cut to commercial faster than I could blink. Mark had clearly had enough. His voice carried the authority of someone who'd reached their absolute limit. You know what? You're right. If you want to attack us personally, if you want to attack our crew, our show, and our audience, then maybe we should end this conversation. The words hung in the air like a challenge. The guest's face transformed, a mixture of shock and vindication. There it is, the real Kelly and Mark. Finally showing your true colors when someone doesn't play by your rules. Kelly stood up straighter, every inch the professional broadcaster. Our true colors have been on display for 20 years. We treat people with kindness until they make it impossible. You've made it impossible. Impossible? The guest's voice cracked with emotion. You know what's impossible? Being authentic in a world that punishes authenticity. Being real when everyone wants you to be a brand. Being human when everyone expects you to be perfect. For a moment, just a moment, there was something almost vulnerable in the guest's voice. Mark and Kelly exchanged a glance, both seasoned enough to recognize pain beneath the anger. Mark's voice softened slightly. Nobody expects you to be perfect. We just expect you to treat people with the same courtesy you'd want to receive. But the moment of vulnerability passed as quickly as it came. The guest's face hardened again. Courtesy is a luxury I can't afford anymore. Not when people like you profit off manufactured sincerity while the rest of us struggle to stay relevant. Kelly had reached her breaking point. Her voice was clear and final. This interview is over. We're going to commercial, and when we come back, we'll have someone else to talk to our audience. The guest's response was explosive. You can't just dismiss me. This is live television. Your audience deserves to see what really happens when someone doesn't follow your script. Mark stepped forward, his presence commanding. Our audience deserves better than this. They deserve respect, and right now you're disrespecting them along with everyone else. The guest turned to face the cameras directly, bypassing the hosts entirely. America, This is what happens when you don't play the game. This is what happens when you try to have a real conversation instead of a promotional appearance. Security was moving now, quietly but purposefully toward the interview area. The producers had made the call. This had gone too far for too long. Kelly maintained her composure, even as chaos swirled around her. We've had thousands of real conversations on this show, with politicians, activists, authors, actors, musicians, and everyday people making extraordinary differences. Real doesn't mean disrespectful. Disrespectful? The guest was almost screaming now. I'll show you disrespectful. But before they could say another word, Mark had stepped in front of the cameras, his broad frame blocking the guest from view. His voice was calm, but absolutely final. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a break. When we return, we'll have something special for you. The guest tried to push around Mark to get back to the cameras, but security had arrived. Professional, quiet, efficient. Within seconds, the situation was contained. Kelly addressed the audience with the grace that had made her a television icon. Sometimes live television doesn't go as planned, but that's what makes it real. We'll be right back with something that will hopefully restore your faith in human kindness. The cameras cut to commercial, but not before capturing one last image. Kelly and Mark standing together, united, professional, and completely in control. They had faced down a complete meltdown with dignity intact. In just 39 seconds of explosive accusations, a routine celebrity interview had become a masterclass in how to handle the unexpected with grace under fire.